There are times it's hard to see the light at the end of the road. We were buried underneath, but today we will rise from below.
One of the number one things that I've come to enjoy studying and thinking about are logical fallacies. I think they're fascinating because they are these seemingly logical pitfalls that we fall into sometimes. And I find them fascinating and I want to study them because I don't want to fall into these traps anymore. And one of the fallacies is called the straw man fallacy, and that's the fallacy that I want to talk about today. So the straw man fallacy happens when you misrepresent the other side of the argument. And that can be in the way of distorting the information or misrepresenting the other side in some way. And that usually happens, in my experience, when you are oversimplifying the other argument. And that happens all the time in politics. Just pick a topic. For example, the abortion debate. It is so incredibly misrepresented and oversimplified by both sides to the other side. So for example, one side wants to say that the other side hates babies, and that side wants to say that that side hates women. And that is an incredibly oversimplified version of that side's belief. And that's just one example of an oversimplification, but it happens everywhere, outside of politics too. And I think it's super important not to strawman any argument, and we're gonna get into why I think that's important, but I think it's also especially important to not strawman an argument between someone that you wanna have a relationship with, whether that's a coworker that you're going to see every day, or if that's a friend that you wanna continue to have a relationship with, or if it's family, or especially your spouse. It's super important not to be falling prey to the straw man fallacy in these relationships. And at this point, I want to ask people, if you haven't seen the video I put out right before this, go back and watch it, because I'm going to reference some of the points that I made in that video, because I think this video builds on that video. So there are a ton of problems with falling prey to any logical fallacy, but I think the straw man fallacy is incredibly important to understand and to avoid. And it's hard because a lot of times we're doing this subconsciously. We don't mean to misrepresent, we don't mean to oversimplify someone else's argument, but we do that. Our brain kind of subconsciously does that because being wrong can be jarring, and our brain wants to avoid that feeling of being wrong, the cognitive dissonance that comes with being given two sets of information that could both be true. And so in order to continue along the narrative that we've told ourselves for who knows how long, we will unintentionally oversimplify the other person's argument in order to debunk it, in order to prove to ourselves that we're right. So when we do this, when we misrepresent the other side, which is first of all dishonest, and it can be frustrating to the person that we're talking to because they don't feel understood. But when we oversimplify someone else's argument, we're preventing meaningful dialogue, and we get in the way of having any meaningful resolution to the conflict, which is ultimately the reason we engage with someone, is to continue to move forward and progress. And I'm not saying that, every time we have a conflict we have to come to a resolution. Sometimes we can agree to disagree, and I'm going to kind of get into that. So not only is it frustrating to the person that you are in a conflict with or in a conversation with that you're misrepresenting and oversimplifying their argument, you might also be falling prey to self-deception, because we all want to be right. We all have this innate desire that our narrative that we're telling ourselves about the reality that we live in, it needs to be right. Because if it's not right, then it's incredibly jarring. The thing is if we strawman everything, that contradicts our worldview, the things that we believe, we're never going to learn. We'd never progress. We'd never figure out the things that we're doing wrong or could be doing better, and we're just going to stagnate and never improve. And I'm not really here to judge anyone, but I think most people would agree with me that they would like to know their blind spots. They would like to learn. They'd like to progress and become better. So when we straw man someone else's argument, we could potentially be doing the opposite of what we want to do.
So the question is then, how do you make sure that the straw man fallacy doesn't happen in your life? And that would be to consciously steel man the other person's argument. So if you look at the name of straw man, when you're straw manning something, you're essentially taking someone's argument, making it a hollow version of what it really is, something that's easy to win, to disprove, and making something that was solid into straw. And so the way that you make sure that you're not straw manning anything in your life is to steel man other people's arguments and other people's opinions. And so the way you do that is you listen intently, and this is the reason why I had you go back and listen to that other video that I made last week, was in order to steel man someone, you need to apply true, genuine curiosity. You need to ask genuine questions to help you understand where they're coming from. And the way that you know that you have steel manned an argument is by repeating back their argument to that person in the most succinct and accurate way possible, and then asking them, is that what you mean? And if you can do that, and if they can say yes, then you've successfully steel manned their argument. Personally, I want to be able to articulate it so well that they feel like they couldn't have said it better themselves. And like I said, straw manning someone's point of view in an interpersonal relationship, whether that's a coworker, friend, family, spouse, whatever, that's not great. It's not good for the relationship because that person doesn't feel understood. And so when you steel man someone's argument, someone's perspective, then they feel incredibly validated and understood. Even if you continue to tell them that you don't agree with them, at least they know that you can empathize with their position, that you have been able to successfully put yourself in their shoes and argue and present their argument in a cohesive, correct, accurate manner. Steel manning is just a fantastic way for us to make sure that we're not falling prey to a logical fallacy, while also helping people know that we understand them. We're enhancing our understanding of other people, and we're fostering respectful dialogue. We're building trust with people. We're encouraging collaboration and reducing miscommunication. And as a bonus, it acts as an educational process for you because, when you go into conflicts, a lot of times you don't want to understand the other side because you already feel you're right, and you don't really know if you're right. Go back to my certainty episode. We always want to believe that we're right. So when we go into arguments and conflicts and just conversations in general, if we can steel man the other person's point of view, we're actually educating ourselves and giving ourselves an opportunity to consider more counter arguments and potentially lead to a more rounded, robust opinion that we can hold, and it just widens our perspective on life. I want to emphasize again something that I emphasized in the last video, and that is that we can't force anyone to understand us. And it's the same thing here. We can't force anyone to steel man our arguments. This concept of steel manning and pretty much everything else I've talked about on this channel, it's all about inner work. It's not about helping someone else or forcing someone else to change, because we can't do that. All we can do is do the work on ourselves, do the inner work. Anyways, I hope that was a good summary of why I think steel manning is one of the best things you can do in an interpersonal relationship. It just goes hand in hand with my last episode of having curiosity, compassion, and acceptance in a relationship, in a conversation. So if we can steel man, I really think that it will increase the effectiveness of the curiosity, compassion, and acceptance. So anyways, if you thought this video was helpful or interesting at all, let me know in the comments. I really appreciate hearing your perspective in the comments. And then, as always, I hope this video becomes a conversation starter for someone. So share this video with someone and start a conversation. Thanks, guys.
Even though a million different mountains stand between us, somehow I know we're gonna see the other side. Even the darkest night can never stop the dreamers. We'll risk it all.